Hey all, Heretic here. Today in the Battlegrounds, we're talking about patch 32.2.4, dropping today, probably about 1 p.m. standard as usual, but we'll see what happens, sometimes earlier, sometimes later, and depending if you're on mobile, it could take a little while longer. Now, there are going to be some standard changes and wild changes, but as you know, here we typically focus almost exclusively on the Battleground stuff. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. Now, there are quite a few changes for the Battlegrounds, so it's going to take a little while to jump into it. We're going to start with a dev comment, and that is, overall, we're very pleased with how Trinkets in our last balance patch have been performing. For this patch, we wanted to take a bit more of a focused, lighter touch. We've made a few adjustments to Murlocs, Elementals, and Quillbores, as well as some specific standout cards like Landlubber and Fireforge Evoker. For Trinkets, we focus primarily on cost adjustments and curating which trinkets can be offered as pivot options. As well, we'll continue to monitor the game and your feedback, and we'll make further adjustments as needed. Well, let's see what cards they change before we throw too many stones. These might be perfect changes. Yeah, there might be outliers they missed, or they chose to wait to see how these nerfs affect those other cards, but let's give it a shot. We're going to be starting with some Minion changes, and we're starting with Noisel of the Many Faces, who gets a change, but not really. You'll see why. Basically, it says, new now, whenever you summon an undead, give all your undead +2/+1 permanently. And this is just a dev comment. This is a text-only update for consistency in language across cards, not a functional change. I almost think this doesn't really need to be in the patch notes if it's just a wording change that does the same thing, but then again, they've probably done that in the past, and then people are screaming at them with pitchforks and torches going, why don't you tell us you made these changes? I was so confused. But I'm always confused, so it's normal for me. Apprentice of Sephin, the golden version only, used to be at the end of your turn, gain +4/+4 and 2 random bonus keywords. Now it is at the end of your turn, gain +8/+8 and 2 bonus random keywords. It's interesting. I don't really love this minion normally, let alone a gold, wanting to wait till I find a gold version. But if a gold version is acquired super early, it could be good if you need a lot of keywords and whatnot. So there's certainly a use case for it. I just think typically I'm not excited if this is the one I'm tripling. There's usually something else, but if I've got 2 of them and they're buffing themselves up, maybe I got Drakari on the board, there's some value to it I can see. But then conversely, do you want to triple them? Because they probably have all the keywords by that point, and tripling them means there's less venom on your board, which feels very bad, but I guess. Landlubber got a nerf. Not the one we needed, just the one we got. It goes from tier 2 to tier 3. Now, as far as I'm concerned, because since its functionality and stats are exactly the same, the change it really needed was, hey, Landlubber's not in the game anymore. But I don't get to tell you that because for some reason they want to keep this piece of, you know how I feel about Landlubber. If the response to every game I queue in the lobby from my chat is, hey, it's a love game, then I'm not really liking the fact that this was a tier 2 or now a tier 3 minion. It still feels kind of shitty. But tier 3 was a better place for it, so let's hope it works. Fireforge Evoker got a bit of a nerf, and that is, used to be a 7/5, start of combat, give your dragons +2/+1 after you cast your tavern spell, improve this. Now, it's an 8/5, so 1 more attack. Start of combat, give your other dragons +2/+1 after you cast a tavern spell, improve this. The key change there is other dragons instead of your dragons. So it will not buff itself anymore. That does help rein it in a little bit because it's 1 less giant minion on dragon boards, but to be honest with you, I'm not really seeing this one massively be a problem. I feel like when it high rolls, it's the appropriate size the board kind of should be, but maybe I'm not seeing the really crazy ones consistently other people are seeing also. 3 little Quillbore, and Quillbore got a buff from this change. Used to be tier 6, now tier 5, same exact stats, same exact abilities, and yeah, tier 5 means there's more of them. You can find it earlier, so it's a little easier to decide your Quillbore, because let's face it, if you don't have any Quillbore and you power level and you triple into a 6 and this is the best card offered to you, you're probably dead most of the time before you can get any value out of it. But sometimes it does work even at 6. This is definitely a buff, at least in this regard to Quillbore. Conversely, Needling Crone went from tier 5 to now tier 6. And this is a little better, right? The way they were positioned before was you'd find Three Little Quillbore, which is a temporary buff, and you'd be like, yay, I got it. But if you didn't already have Needling Crone, it wasn't great. But now if you say triple your Three Little Quillbore into a Needling Crone, that feels amazing. So it just, now the order feels a little more functional and just feels better overall. We'll see how it works, but I think this will be a good change. Shoalfin Mystic got hit with a nerf, and not even the nerf of the degree that they're showing here in the old stats. It says old 3/3 Battlecry, your tavern spells that give stats grant an extra +1 health this game. Well, the issue with that is currently in the game, Shoalfin gives a Battlecry of +1/+1 this game to spells. So is the nerf accurate? Because the old stats aren't accurate and I'm unsure. I could just ask, but this is a more fun, hey, someone screwed up, I'm just gonna run with it and say, who knows? But odds are this is probably correct. Now it is a 4/4 Battlecry, your tavern spells that give stats grant an extra +1 attack this game. So instead of being a +1/+1, it's just gonna be +1 attack. Not really crazy. I'm okay with that. But that much being said, maybe you're not. Maybe you're like, no, my Shoalfin, I loved it. We'll see how it plays out. We'll see. Hackerfin got a bit of a buff to say the least. And now this is basically reversing it to what it was the last time it changed, but it recently has been Battlecry, give your other Murlocs +1/+1 improved by each different keyword or bonus keyword in your warband. Now is going to be Battlecry, give your other minions +1/+1 improved by each different bonus keyword in your warband. Now the huge difference there, because it's still not buffing itself, is Murlocs versus minions. Now it will buff any of your minions. Before it would only buff Murlocs. It's going to what it used to be. At tier 5, I don't hate this. If this was at like tier 3 or tier 4, I'd be like, ew, there's too many in the pool. This is too impactful. At tier 5, that's okay. It's fine. It's very good if you're running an all Divine Shield, Reborn, whatever, and you pop this on the board, heaven forbid you have a brand, yeah, stats everywhere. But for tier 5, that kind of feels like what you should be seeing, so it's not a crazy change. It at least makes this card viable if you triple into it and there's no better other option and you've got some variety in keywords, at least you can buff your board now. Bream Counter got a buff nerf. That's definitely a buff. It used to be a 4/4. Well, this is in your hand. After you play a Murloc, gain +3/+3. Now is a 4/3. Well, this is in your hand. After you play a Murloc, gain +4/+3. So one less initial starting health for more attack throughout the game while you're cycling Murlocs. Not bad, no complaints. King Bagurgle gonna change for what must be the billionth time. Used to be, of this iteration, a 4/3 Battlecry, give your other Murlocs +2/+2, to now being a 3/4 Battlecry, give your other Murlocs +2/+3. Well, let's face it, you don't really care about his stat lines that much, so the loss of attack isn't a big deal, and the fact that he's giving more health makes him a little better in that early time when you're finding him. Late in the game, it's not a big deal either way, but still, it's a buff overall. Murky got a definite buff. Used to be a 4/4 Battlecry, give a friendly Murloc +4/+4 for each one you control. Now, a 6/6, who cares about the stats it has? Give a friendly Murloc +6/+6 for each one you control. Obviously, this is a bigger buff, it's a better buff. Murloc players rejoice. Tranquil Menitive got a bit of a change. Now, it used to be, and it's just the spellcraft changing, nothing about the minion. Spellcraft, your tavern spells that give stats grant an extra +1 attack this game. Now is going to be Spellcraft, your tavern spells that give stats grant an extra +1 health this game. And I feel like early this is fantastic. Later it doesn't matter as much. But still, I'm not going to complain about it. I generate so many of these randomly when I'm playing things that I typically would prefer the health, at least through turn 10. After that, yeah, obviously the attack's a little better at that point. But let's face it, that amount of scaling isn't going to make a difference typically in a late game. So we'll see how it is. But I feel like it's kind of a meh change. I'm not really in love with this minion, but I keep getting its Spellcraft no matter what I do. So, hey, we'll take it. Mechanome Interpreter got a short-term buff for a long-term nerf, and that is they used to be a 2/3 whenever a friendly magnetic minion is played or magnetized, give it +2/+3. It is now a 2/4 whenever a friendly magnetic minion is played or magnetized, give it +2/+2. So yeah, the moment you play it, it's got one more health. Yay, a buff. But then anytime you magnetize, it gives one less health. That is definitely a big nerf for this minion. It's only good for the moment you play it, and that's assuming you're not also playing a magnetic with it. Otherwise, you'd much rather just have the previous version of it. This is a nerf overall to this minion. It's not bad change. I don't hate it because you do attach a lot of magnetics, and I've seen these stay on board for the entire game. So I think it makes sense overall, just as a nerf to the later mech boards. It has a golden one of these sitting in back. Glowing Cinder is getting a bit of a buff, and that is, it used to be tier 4, 4-2. Now it is tier 3, 3-1. Well, its Death Rattle is giving you extra attack on your elementals. So obviously it dying is great because you don't want it to survive somehow, so less health is good. And the fact that you're getting it at tier 3 means there's more of them, and it's just easier to start buffing your elementals if this is the route you're going early. So it's definitely not a bad thing at all. Eternal Knight has got a bit of a buff. Now, same tier, same stats base. Used to be, has +1/+1 for each friendly Eternal Knight that died this game, wherever this is. Now it is a +2/+1 for each knight that died that game, wherever this is. It is not a huge change, but if you find 2 of these early, obviously, or if you have 1 and a reborn, you really can get these scaled pretty quickly to give you some tempo in the early to mid game. So it's definitely not a bad thing, and more attack doesn't hurt us at all. Undead typically either don't have anywhere near enough attack or way too much attack. So it's just kind of an early game buff, and I think it's a good change for the minion in general. No complaints. All right, let's talk about lesser trinkets that are getting changed. Now, I'm going to cover all the ones that are going to have an effect change. If it's just a price change, there's a link in the description because there's quite a few, and I'm not going to sit here for an extra 20 minutes throwing up images where the costs are changing when Blizzard doesn't even update the images, so I have the correct cost anyways. I'm not crafting completely unique cards, which I could do, which would take way too much time and virtually no one would care. Let's start with Bleeding Heart. Now, it used to be 6 gold. After 8 friendly minions die, get a random undead. Now it is 3 gold, and you have to have 9 minions die. Now, you could say, oh, that's a nerf. Clearly, because 1 more minion has to die, but you've also lowered the cost, which means you can now buy an extra minion. And if you have enough summons already, this is not a bad thing at all. This is a buff in my mind. Yeah, long term, you'll get a couple less minions, and that does add up, and it is important, but now you can have a way to enable it, because it does suck when you have to buy this thing and you have just the bare minimum to make it work, but now you can actually afford to get maybe another minion, change something crappy on your board for something better. So this one, at least to me, feels better. We'll see the reality after we play some games. Divine Signet got a big change, and it used to be a lesser trinket that was 4 gold. After a friendly minion loses Divine Shield, get a random tavern spell 3 times for combat. And it was, in a word, amazing. It was just so much value you get out of this thing. So this makes sense, the change to me. Honestly, it kind of should be there. It is now a greater trinket that costs 3 gold. That after a friendly minion loses Divine Shield, get a random tavern spell 4 times for combat, which is still very good. Yeah, you could get 4 horrible 1-cost tavern spells, but you also could get 5, 6-cost spells. There's a lot of good stuff you can get out of it, and I feel like overall you're going to get far more value out of this. I felt like as a lesser trinket, the times I got it, it was incredibly impactful 99% of the time. So this is actually a pretty good change to me, even though it is clearly a nerf. Nurglish Phrasebook got a tiny buff, and that is just after you play a minion, give your leftmost minion in your hand +3/+3. It is just an additional health. It is not a massive change. If you liked it, it's better now. Now, in addition to all of the ones we have that are changing their abilities or their costs, we have some that are just going away. And let's look at these. We have Gem Donation, Windfall Portrait, Feral Talisman, Daraland Cheese Wheel, and Impulsive Portrait have been removed from the lesser trinket pool. And I must say, I've never seen any of these ever do anything memorable in my mind. I played a lot of games in this meta, and I don't think I've seen any of these do anything. So I'm kind of happy to see all of these removed. I think I've taken Feral Talisman once because it was just some tempo when I was desperate, but otherwise it doesn't feel good when these are your options typically. Greater trinket updates now. We've got a few. Remember, gold ones we're not going to talk about. Those will be in the description, the link for those if you want to see those changes. Let's get into the ones that change at all. We're going to start with Nurglish Phrasebook, and that is after you play a minion, give your leftmost minion in your hand +6/+6. It's a 1/1 buff. If you liked it, once again, you're still gonna like it now. Theatar sticker, they keep trying with this poor thing. I have still not seen anybody use it. Maybe we will now? That's what I keep saying every time they buff it. And it used to be 0 gold after you play a minion with no type, give a friendly minion of each type, +6/+6. It is now 1 gold after you play a minion with no type, give a friendly minion of each type, +7/+7. So it is better. Does it make it good enough for you to want to play? We'll see if some people actually start to use this consistently now. Curator sticker definitely got a buff. Used to be 0 gold, get a mishmash in a 2/2 amalgam with Venomous. Now is 1 gold, get a mishmash in a 10/10 amalgam with Venomous. I'm assuming they're not changing the stats on the mishmash. Maybe they are, I don't know. But that being said, your at least amalgam's getting one heck of a buff for when you get this, so not bad. Now we have some bug fixes and game improvements to cover. We're going to start with fixed a bug where certain trinkets could combine with blood gem activators to cause very long terms. Luckily, I didn't have that thing happen to me that I'm aware of, so I have no complaints, and it sounds like a very good fix for you Quillbore fans out there. Fixed a bug where Macaw Portrait caused Golden Monstrous Macaw to trigger an incorrect number of times. Now, I'm not 100% sure I suffered from this, but I also suspect I suffered from this. Typically, by the time I would notice this interaction being an issue, there was so many things going on during the turn, it was hard to actually figure it out, short of going back and watching the recording, and I wasn't gonna mess with it. It wasn't worth it, but it's still a good fix regardless, because you know something was going wrong somewhere. Fixed a bug where Golden Silithid Burrower gave the wrong effect on its first death rattle after tripling. I definitely saw this. It was very annoying, and I'm pretty sure if you saw this, you were annoyed by this too. So once again, very good fix. We're not complaining about this at all. But hey, that's it. What do you think about this patch? Are you excited? Do you feel like, well, you know, Heretic, it's just enough where I'm content. It's not aggressive enough. Or you like, no, I like the way they're lightly nudging it. They're not trying too hard to correct it. They're just pushing it lightly in the right direction till it finds a happy balance. Typically, I find that is the best effect. Lots of small balancing, with a couple massive ones that need to happen for the case of certain minions who probably shouldn't be in the game. Yeah, I'm looking at you, landlubbers, sorry. Things like that, for the most part, I feel like that's the way to do it. But that's just me. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. I'm curious how you might adjust things, or if you think everything is going just great. Thanks for watching all. I'll catch you in the Battlegrounds. Until then, have a good one. Later.